Thank you everyone for coming out this morning to hear a part of my story, and thank you to Creative Mornings and everyone that worked so hard to open up a St. Louis chapter. I am honored and humbled to be the first speaker in St. Louis. As Hiavash said, I am Arica Brown. I'm the founder, artistic, and executive director of Kinetics Dance Company. Kinetics Dance Company is a 501c3 nonprofit professional dance company here in St. Louis. And in addition to our concert season, we also offer a full program of adult drop-in dance classes, which we heard a little bit about coming, but he wasn't terrible. He did a good job. And we also have a youth program where we raise students as artists from a concert dance style perspective in a non-competitive environment. So I'm here today to talk about my journey of founding CKDC in the context of my ideas about courage. Courage has many faces. If we employ it even just a little bit, it can take us on some incredible adventures. It took me a lot of courage to come here today after almost 10 successful concert seasons where I have been terrified to speak to our audiences before our shows. In high school and even in undergrad, I actually liked speech class. I loved to write, and I was very outgoing, so it was a good combination. But after my academic career was over, my ambition was high, but I was met with some people who recommended that I didn't get myself into such risky business. And so I sometimes allowed other people to compromise my courage. It took me some time to cultivate my strength from within and find that strength not contingent on the acceptance of others. Pardon me. When you have something big that can change people's lives, or even the world, you're going to experience those who will be against you. But in the same breath, I must say that people, or as I refer to them, my community, are going to be your biggest support system. So I figured I would show you some pictures of our community. So let's rewind to my beginning. How do we deviate from the trajectory that life sets us on? Nobody gets to decide if they come to consciousness in a third world country, during a recession, to a mother who didn't make it through labor, or to a parent who's alone in their journey. I came to the world with a mom, a dad, and grandparents, but my time with my mother was very limited as she died before my 6th birthday. She had stage 4 cervical cancer, and treatments couldn't save her life. At that age, I couldn't fully understand what happened to my mom, but I knew that we didn't get to see her again. And this sent my dad into a period of depression, but his parents took me in and helped raise me. I don't have many memories of my mother, but what I do have are quite a few memories of not having a mother. These feelings started around the age of 10 as our relationship with our parents slowly transitioned from caregiver to friend. And the void that I experienced grew. As a teenager, I was often really jealous of people that got to go out with their moms. My grandmother was already pretty elderly, and going to the grocery store was quite a feat enough, so I knew she wasn't going to have the stamina to hit the town with me. So my trajectory was aimed for destruction, self-doubt, depression, the why me feelings. I was a victim. I had unhealthy relationships with men in my life because I was afraid of having to deal with loss again. And I found my way, but it wasn't without kicking and screaming. It wasn't without showing my ugly and learning things the hard way. But I had this dream of a life where I was connected and happy and independent. And I couldn't really articulate it, but it was there, a yearning. And I wouldn't have described it as courage, but I had the tenacity to work towards something against all odds. Maybe because I had nothing to lose and anything to gain. So I did what any sensible, soul-searching, meaning of life-chasing person would do. I went to college. Thank you for laughing at my joke. Academically, I always had to work a lot harder than my peers. Things didn't tend to come naturally to me, so I knew that I wouldn't be a good candidate for math or science, and I knew that going to college wasn't going to be an easy task. I knew that these academic shortcomings were going to be difficult to face. So I decided to go as an English comp major because I decided I wanted to be a writer, and of course you need a degree to do that. But Comp 1 wasn't really inspiring me, and simultaneously I'm being introduced to this wonderful world of performing arts. The dance department at University of Missouri St. Louis was young, and by young I mean it had just started. Unknowingly, I took the first dance class that they ever offered because it fulfilled a fine arts credit, and it was listed as a lecture course. It turns out all dance classes are listed as lecture courses, and this was no sit in your chair and listen sort of class. I had to buy a leotard, tights, ballet slippers, the whole nine. I was apprehensive, but I made some incredible friends my first week in the program. So I also noticed I wasn't the only beginner. So with nothing more than the last pick of the high school pom squad in my list of dance experience, I decided to stick with it. Now, after I took fundamentals of dance my first semester, I took modern dance my second semester. I found that I liked this style quite a bit more than jazz and ballet, and I was really starting to get excited about this dancing thing beyond the friendships that I found. But it wasn't until my third semester in when the light bulb went on. I took dance composition, and I was like, wait a minute. I can make up anything that I want at all. There's no parameters, no restrictions. And I fell in love. I immediately knew that I wanted to do choreography for the rest of my life, but I just didn't yet know that it was what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. My first professor, although a hard ass, I credit for making me a dancer. Without her strict and sometimes abusive approach, I wouldn't be where I am today. My second professor became my mentor, Rob Scoggins. Rob came to the program after about 2 years. He believed in me, and he helped me harness my potential. Rob had a good eye for talent, and he was very good at nurturing young artists. Before him, I was advised to not apply for school in California because I would never have any opportunities among the other, more talented students. But after him, I was convinced that I could do anything that I wanted, and I could do it well. As the first in my family to go to university, I didn't have the resources that I needed. I could have applied for several scholarships that no one educated me about, not even my academic advisors. And in addition to working multiple part-time jobs, I took out the maximum I could borrow every semester. I lived off of it. And then I graduated with an arts degree and over $100,000 in student loan debt. But honestly, I couldn't be more grateful for the experience. When I finished college, I knew that I needed an outlet to continue choreographing, so I started calling studios to see who was hiring, and I got a job teaching dance at a small studio in Maplewood. This business also accepted my offer to teach some hours in exchange for my time in rehearsal. So I bartered my teaching salary to start my dance company. Now at first, consuming Kinetics Dance Company was nothing more than a club. It was just a group of my friends, adults, who all wanted to continue dancing post-college. And some of them didn't even go to school for dance. We didn't get paid or charged for our performance services. It was something that we just did because we loved it and we wanted to. But we still referred to ourselves as a dance company and used official language because fake it till you make it, right? Over time, many more adults wanted to work with us, but they didn't want to perform. They actually just wanted to come in and take our warm-up class before we started rehearsal. Now, back in 2009, when my project started, I didn't know of any places that you could take dance classes in St. Louis. In fact, I had even invested another 2 years in my education to complete the somatic certificate at Washington University under the direction of David Marchant. I didn't know of anywhere else that I could go continue to learn about or train in dance. Especially with my limited years of experience. Now, speaking of experience, my dad instilled a love of travel in me at a young age, and it followed me to adulthood, where I take our annual road trip out west. I enjoy the national parks, the big cities. And by 2010, I had this idea. Maybe I should look up dance companies. And sure enough, there were so many places to take dance classes out there. Everything from studios that were established just to provide dance classes for adults to professional companies that offered a program much like CKDC does now. So the focus of my annual trip shifted. I did market research, I brought ideas back home, and I implemented them in the best way that I could with the resources that I had. As sole proprietor, I started officially offering a program of dance in 2011, and by 2012, we outgrew our little studio in Maplewood, and we moved to the Patch neighborhood. The Magic Hat was the name of the building, and it housed Melt. You guys might remember that restaurant. It later moved to the Cherokee District. The Magic Hat recruited individual artists under the direction of Jenny B. Gypsy. Now, the point was to move in artists of all trade: textile artists, sculptors, painters, hair, makeup, dance, anything. But sadly, we noticed that our growing audience of class participants didn't want to make the trek across town to hang out in a neighborhood that we were hoping to revitalize. So what was supposed to be a move for growth ended up being proof that we needed a more central location to serve our community. And with this on my mind, I retired to my apartment in the West End every night, until one night, I noticed that a Pilates studio was opening. I made connection to discover that they had built a ballroom dance floor, and they were offering tango classes. So I had a look at the space, and I proposed to move my business in on a sub-rental agreement to add and expand to their dance programming. Once approved, all of our clients returned, eventually in droves, and that's when the real growth started. It was in this studio where we applied for and received our 501c3 nonprofit status. It was in this space where I humbly transitioned from owner to founder. Everything was going well until one evening, without notice, our sub-rental agreement was terminated. We were scheduled to have classes that evening, but we were asked to not report to the space. It was April 30th, 2015, and I affectionately refer to that as our Independence Day. See, we had long since outgrown the space, and working under the rules and the regulations of another business posed many challenges. If it weren't for being kicked out, we might have stayed under the wing of that business forever, complacent. Our name would have always been hidden under theirs, and our hard work and our effort would have always been partially credited to them. We would have been encouraged to spend our money in the way that they saw fit. In one of my favorite books, You Are a Badass, written by Jen Sincero, she says, "On the other side of your fear is your freedom." And April 30th, 2015 was a turning point like none other. I had to decide if I was going to fight the good fight. Was I going to give it my all like I never had before? Take out the business loan, assume the risk, hire more employees? Which a lot of you don't know this, but even as a nonprofit, we pay a lot of taxes. Some people know that. Someone in the back has a nonprofit. The cost associated with just having one single employee is equivalent to the entire salary of just having another contractor. Was I going to work day and night and give up any social life that I had been holding on to keep this dream afloat? Or was I going to run away to Washington or Oregon and live in the mountains with my people? I was afraid of both options. But I often say that there's only one thing that I love more than open roads and landscapes, and that's community. The people kept me here. I was feeling defeated. I didn't know which direction my life should go, but I had dozens of people reach out and say, "You're not giving up. How can we help?" And those weren't empty promises. These friends and clients, quite literally, followed us around St. Louis as we rented from almost 4 different facilities that summer. And I say almost 4 because one of the rental situations was such a bad fit for us that we had to move back to the previous renter for another month. The goal was to find a new home, but in the meantime, the backup plan was to just find a decent place to rent for a while in case finding a new home wasn't in the cards. Now, the cost of renting hourly was astronomical, and it quickly ate up our bank account, rendering me a period where I didn't receive a paycheck. Now, every business owner has to deal with this at some point or another, but you would hope that you're past that by your 6th year in business, or you might need to start questioning your sustainability. It was an uphill battle, to say the least, but it was one worth fighting. Not to mention, it's a lot easier when you feel like you have the most powerful army marching beside you. I am not alone in my journey to make CKDC a success, as you can see, even though I'm a nerd. My dad wrote that. The clients who asked me, how can I help, assisted us in the search for a new home. And when we settled on one, they showed up to do carpentry work and help us build our studio floor, even if they had never done that type of work before. And I was connected to the space that we finally made our home by someone that I previously worked as director of marketing for. Achieving your deepest desires takes a village. Never underestimate the power of people. Here are some more great examples of our community. On the other end, you might find that there will be snakes in your business. You might find people that wish to get close to you for selfish reasons that aren't revealed for months or sometimes years. The ones who put your nonprofit out on the street. The ones who become too possessive of your work or copy your business plan and steal your clients. I've heard so many stories from small business owners and founders of nonprofits. You see, starting something is just not for the faint of heart. Which reminds me of my original idea about courage. Mine is invested through a feeling of support, but you can't always rely on other people to find your courage. You must have it within you, and you must constantly reevaluate who supports your passion. And you're not going to be a perfect judge of character. You can't be overly possessive about your operations in fear of someone becoming a competitor. People may use you, and you just take all those lessons, and you continue to be the example. Because all that attention really means is that you are doing something very right. Right enough that other people are noticing you and your work, and they want to be a part of it. On the wall in the bathroom of one of my favorite vegan restaurants, Sweet Art, there's a quote that says, "Your life unfolds in proportion to your courage." And I believe that. I noticed that once I made my mind up, made a decision, I would relentlessly chase it until I had manifested what I was after. And now, after almost 3 years in our new scary location, with only $11,000 left on our build-out loan, we are still growing. We are dominating the market. We are bringing people together, and we are transforming lives. We are innovating dance in St. Louis, and we are redefining what it means to be a dancer. We are showing this city how dance can truly be immersed in a community. And we're doing it with open hearts and open minds. But not without caution. Sometimes being courageous is about saying no. Remember the people that gave you a reason to not be courageous? Stop taking their advice. Stop listening to the naysayers. Let go of toxic friendships and business relationships. Everyone will be so quick to tell you what a mistake you are making when you finally take the leap and you start following your passion and your dreams. And some of that is honest. They honestly want to protect you. And some of it is jealousy, because they're not ready to take this leap. So I've talked a lot about my experience, but I really wanted to hear from you guys. What is your idea of courage? Or tell me about a time that you were courageous. I will pick someone. Yay! Thank you.
Hello. Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story with us. I think it was amazing. And also thank you all for coming here. It's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Baba Jade. I'm a co-founder of one of the startups that works here in T-Rex. And listening to your story is great, and it just reminded me of how I also define courage as well. So I've come to realize that people generally, there's always a lot of crazy things that try to prevent us from moving forward, but they will always be there. I mean, that's how the world works. But I come to believe that the definition of courage, or an expression of it, has to do with recognizing that fear, that it is there, but not letting it prevent you from moving forward. And an example of how I expressed that was even starting my company with my other co-founders. So a few years ago, we started our company. It's called Makers Valley. We connect fashion designers across the world to manufacturers in Italy. And I was working as a developer for an IT company in Buenos Aires. And I had to leave my company to go work in an accelerator in Puerto Rico. And leaving my friends, leaving the people who I've come to love as family, living a beautiful experience over there, to plunge into something that I had no idea what the outcome was, but I just knew that this was something I wanted to do. And a lot of people were like, what if it doesn't work out well? All those things. But regardless, just recognizing that fear and not letting it hold you back, I think, is quite crucial. So, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So you kind of had the experience I talked about with, people are warning you, but it's because they love you and they don't want to see you fail. And yeah, but if you're going to do something, you kind of just have to do it. Anyone else? I'm going to call on my dancers.
Hi, my name is Terry. Pleasure to see everyone. I'm really enjoying this fantastic conversation. I have a experience of courage where in the end it did not come out to what I wanted it to. Last year I applied for this big fellowship that took just a lot of time and energy and resources, and it helped me to realize that sometimes the courage is being able to determine that you have a voice. And it's about organizing, and it's about coalescing yourself to be able to say that voice. Now, whether or not someone agrees with it or not, that may not necessarily be the point. The point for me was being able to put myself out there, and it helped me to realize what I'm capable of.
That story really resonates with me because as a nonprofit, we apply for so many grants and we get so few of them. So yeah, you have to be ready for that. Yeah, Sophia.
Hi, I am Sophia. When I was 5, my dog died. That's when I really started thinking about people and circle of life. It changed my life. My dog, he was everything to me. School started getting harder for me because everything reminded me of him. And
you're still here.
Yeah.
You made it.
And I'd always imagine him, and he got me through the hard times, and he was my courage. Everything about him was my life.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't even want to have to think about what happens when Lydia and Josephine pass. Guys will have to be knocking on my door like, Miss Arica, it's time for dance class. Hello. Thank you for sharing, Sophia. Does anyone else have something they'd like to say? Yeah, thank you.
My name is Ken. Primarily, I'm a photographer. I've been working as a freelancer off and on for probably 40 years. And the adventures that Arica is describing is pretty typical to any kind of entrepreneurial effort you're going to make. It's part of the cycle. I was a driver's ed teacher for 13 years. And I thought I knew about fear until I became a driver's ed teacher. fear is an amazing thing. It's just not the kind of fear you have when you're worried about your bills or where you're in a horror movie. It's way more subtle than that. And we all have fears, and they all come from inside. They come from things that our parents tell us. They come from things that our friends tell us. Our family and friends are probably the worst influence you will ever have because they're afraid for us or they're jealous. They really are. The thing that makes fear interesting is if something doesn't work out or there's somebody you just don't understand, somebody that just makes no sense, if you step back and approach it from a position where that person is afraid, the whole picture changes and things become crystal clear. It's not good or bad, it's just clear. You know, it's like an awakening. So take a look at fear in a different way and things will work out. Honest.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Yes. Oh my gosh, I have so many volunteers. Woo! Never getting to my last slide.
Hello, my name is Rod. I'm from St. Louis, but I've had a chance to live all over the place. And a lot of the thing for a lot of people from St. Louis, some of us here might be from St. Louis and some might be from somewhere else, is getting outside of yourself. I've had a lot of different jobs. I've studied aerospace engineering. I've worked in radio. I've been a journalist. I lived in New York. I lived in Japan. I lived in Spain. I've been a broadcaster. I've worked in IT, and I've done a whole bunch of different things. And one of the best things that I can learn, especially from what you're talking about, starting from nothing, being a dancer, going into the dance world and not starting when you're 2, which like most dancers do. They start when they're 3, and they've been doing it forever, and that's what they do. That's a certain amount of courage as well. But going back to when you're 3 years old, when you're starting a business or trying to start something new is an important thing. I taught English in Japan, and I'd learn other languages as well. And what a lot of people forget is when you're 3 years old and you're running around, you don't know how to speak anything. 3-year-old in any country can barely speak their language. They make mistakes all the time, and they don't care. They get corrected, they change it, and keep moving. They keep changing, they move on, they build on it, and they keep going. And they're not afraid. There's no fear there, and they have the courage. They don't even know they have. They just keep going and get it done. But one thing is common I've seen across the world is people get older, and even when you're 6 years old, I'm a big kid. I know something now. I'm better. I'm a big kid. And you hold on to that because you're secure with it, and you don't want to be a little kid. You know, if you're 8 years old, you don't want to be with the little kids. You want to make sure that you know something. But getting broken down and trying to learn something new and to expand your horizons, and whether you recognize it as courage or not when you're doing it, I think is something that's very important to do. And if we're all creatives in this room, I think you put yourself out there and try to remember to learn something new. It takes a certain amount of courage to not know anything. I went from being a broadcaster here in St. Louis, getting paid to speak, write, and read, and took an 18-hour flight to go to Tokyo where I was illiterate, ill-reader-it, ill-writer-it, ill-speaker-it. I didn't even know how to eat. I didn't know how to use chopsticks yet. After I learned, I had to learn, and you had to learn how to break it down so that you actually move forward. And it can be done. Whether you're totally successful or not, I started a business. It was in the middle of the worst recession ever. It wasn't a great time to start, but I tried to learn from those things, and I went down back to where I started and then tried to take everything I knew and move forward with it. If you have your business, if you're trying to be creative, even if it's just on one project, don't be afraid to not know something. Go into it with what you have in the bank because that's the advantage you have over from when you've been 3 years old. But then move forward. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to not know what you're doing. And that takes a lot of courage to start a business when you don't know what you're doing. You're going to UMSL, taking their first classes, and you're ancient by dance standards, but not by human being standards, and try to learn and move forward with that. Anybody in here could do it, and that's a certain amount of courage that everybody in here has. Don't be afraid to go be 3, because being 3 is fun. They have fun. They just do it and learn it. Think about that, and that takes a lot of courage.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Let me come back again. Something I've noticed with a lot of clients and suppliers is the game that you're trying to play is too small. You need to play a much bigger game. We've got the internet. In the 80s, when I had photography studios in downtown Chicago, we didn't have the distribution that you have now. So you can go anywhere you want. I did a gallery from 2003 to 2008. We ended up in 14 countries back in 2003, 2008. All of it was done on public library computers. So, I mean, you can do big stuff. You just have to put your mind to it. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it, because you can.
Hi, I'm Carrie. So in 2009, my husband and I were working in an architecture firm. He's in architecture, I'm in design, and we were going through a terrible economy. We were both laid off. We had a home, 2 cars, 2 kids, one with special needs, one who we were paying for her education. And sometimes you have courage, and sometimes courage just finds you. And I think that it's just a matter of taking that first step. So we started our business, a design firm, and that summer we had 15 projects, and we were trying to figure out how to hire people and make things happen for us. Since then, we've opened 2 more businesses, and you're right, it hasn't always been easy. There were times when we had to ask my daughter, can we borrow money from your college fund so that we can pay our employee this week? There were very, very scary times. But you know what? If you take that first step, that's the biggest thing. Just make it happen. That's.
Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to go ahead into my closing statement because you've actually alluded to my overall message. Thank you. No, that's great. No, it's really great. So people always refer to survivors of cancer or individual facing terminal illness as courageous. But if you ask any of these patients about courage, they will just tell you they were just normal people. Much like my mom, who fought as long as she could. She was one of the most courageous women I know. But to me, she was just my mom. And in her normalcy was her beauty. She didn't have an unusual amount of courage. It took her facing the end of her life to fight. But tomorrow is not guaranteed. And we don't always get a warning or a diagnosis to know that. So you have no other choice than to be courageous. You only have this one life to live. What do you want to do with it? Thank you so much for your time.